I remember the exact second everything tipped, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing, of how fast your heart is moving, of how there's no one left to blame but yourself. I had crossed into a place where pretending was no longer possible. There was no rush of excitement like I'd imagined. No sudden clarity. What I felt instead was weight. Heavy and undeniable. The understanding that this wasn't happening to me, I was choosing it. That realization settled deep, cutting through every excuse I'd been holding onto that I told myself I could still stop. I told myself this was just a moment of weakness, that moments pass if you let them. But my body didn't listen to logic. My thoughts scattered, clashing with everything I believed about myself. Loyalty. Control. Integrity. All of it felt fragile, like it could crack under the pressure of a single decision that he was close enough that I could sense him without looking. Presence does that, it announces itself without sound. I became painfully aware of how little space existed between us, how that distance had already been shrinking long before this moment. Nothing about it felt sudden anymore. It felt inevitable, and that scared me more than desire ever could. My mind raced ahead, playing out consequences I wasn't ready to face. Faces. Questions. Silence that would follow me everywhere. I thought about the life I'd built, the promises I'd made without ever imagining they'd be tested like this. I thought about how easy it would be to turn away and how hard it would be to live with the memory if I didn't. There was a split second where time seemed suspended. Where everything I was and everything I was about to become balanced on the same fragile edge. I waited for guilt to stop me. I waited for fear to win. Instead, I felt a strange calm, like something inside me had finally given up the fight. That surrender wasn't loud. It didn't feel reckless or wild. It felt deliberate. Quiet. Almost gentle. And that's what haunts me the most. I wasn't swept away. I stepped forward with open eyes. In that moment, I understood that crossing the line doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Like acceptance. Like allowing something you've been denying to finally take shape. The realization hit hard. Wanting had already changed me. This was just the confirmation that I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel powerful. I felt exposed, stripped of every excuse I'd used to protect myself from the truth. This wasn't about loneliness anymore. Or feeling unseen. This was about choosing to betray something solid for something uncertain and intoxicating. When it was over, there was no relief. Just a hollow space where certainty used to be. The silence returned, heavier than before, filled with everything I hadn't said and couldn't take back. I avoided thinking too far ahead because the future suddenly felt unstable, like one wrong step could collapse it entirely. That I didn't regret it the way people expect you to regret things. Not immediately. What I felt was confusion. A tangled mix of guilt and longing, of shame and attachment. That combination scared me. Regret can be clean. This was messy. That I realized then that I had changed the shape of my life without knowing what would replace it. There was no undoing what had happened, no version of the past where I could pretend this choice didn't exist. I had crossed into something permanent, even if no one else knew yet. The hardest part wasn't what I'd done. It was knowing I'd felt alive while doing it. That truth sat heavy in my chest, impossible to ignore. It forced me to question everything, what I wanted, what I deserved, and whether comfort was the same thing as love. As I stood there, surrounded by the aftermath of a decision I could never unmake, one thought repeated itself over and over: this moment would follow me. Into my silence. into my relationship, into every version of myself that came after. And no matter how carefully I tried to move forward, would never be able to say I didn't know what I was doing when I let everything change. After that night, I stopped trusting comfort. I started observing patterns that he changed his phone password 3 days later. Not casually. Not accidentally. Intentionally. I noticed because one evening he handed me his phone to check a delivery notification, then hesitated before unlocking it himself and placing it in my hand like a controlled object. The openness we once had was gone, replaced by management that he started going to the gym more often. New shirts. Better cologne. Haircuts every 2 weeks instead of every 2 months. He claimed he wanted to feel confident again. I wondered when confidence became something that needed secrecy that he carried his phone everywhere. Kitchen. Balcony. Bathroom. Even quick trips to take out the trash. If a notification appeared, he angled the screen away. If I walked too close, the conversation ended. It wasn't dramatic. It was calculated that I tested him once. Who's texting you this late? He didn't look up. Group chat. About what? Work stuff. At midnight, the lies weren't explosive. They were small and controlled. That's what made them dangerous. When I finally brought up the heart emoji, he didn't get defensive. He got offended. You don't trust me? He asked quietly, like I had wounded him, that I tried to explain it wasn't about trust. It was about transparency. But he turned it around so smoothly I almost apologized. You're creating problems in your head, he said. I can't even talk to people without you assuming something. People, not her. That I started questioning myself. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe 5 years had made me too dependent. Maybe this was what long-term relationships looked like after the honeymoon phase. Less passion. More routine, but routine doesn't hide messages. One evening he fell asleep on the couch. His phone rested on his chest, screen lighting up every few minutes. I stared at it from across the room, fighting the urge. I had never checked his phone before. Never felt the need. That night, I did that, and my hands shook as I lifted it. He had changed the password, but I knew him. Birthdays mattered to him. I tried his mother's birthday, unlocked. The first thing I saw wasn't explicit. It was intimate. Her name sat at the top of his messages. The conversation wasn't short. It wasn't new. Weeks of daily communication that I scrolled, inside jokes I didn't understand. Complaints about work he never shared with me. Photos of his lunch sent to her. Voice notes. Laughing emojis. And then the lines that felt like knives. I feel like you actually get me. I can't talk like this at home. You make my day better. My vision blurred, but I kept reading. She asked if he was happy. That he replied, it's complicated. Complicated. 5 years reduced to one word. Then I saw it. I wish I met you earlier. There was no confusion left. No room for interpretation. This wasn't casual. This wasn't friendly. This was emotional intimacy redirected somewhere else. That my chest tightened so hard I had to sit down. I could hear him breathing behind me, peaceful and unaware. The man who once told me I was his future was building a parallel connection in secret. That I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't insecure, that I was being replaced slowly. That I put the phone back exactly where it was and didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and replayed every recent memory. The late nights. The sudden gym obsession. The distance. It all aligned too perfectly that in the morning, I confronted him that I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked one simple question: do you have feelings for her? His face shifted. Not shocked. Not confused. Calculating. What are you talking about? I read the messages. Silence stretched between us like a pulled wire. It's not what you think, he said finally that I almost laughed. That sentence is universal. It always means exactly what you think. You told her you wish you met her earlier. He ran his hands through his hair. It's just talking. It's not physical. Nothing happened. Just talking. As if emotional betrayal doesn't count, that he said she understood him. That they connected over work stress. That it felt harmless. That he never meant for it to go that far. How far is far? I asked that he couldn't answer. Instead, he flipped the focus. If you weren't so distant lately, maybe I wouldn't need someone to talk to. There it was. The shift. The blame that I felt anger rise, but underneath it was something worse. Sadness. Not because he chose someone else, but because he justified it. So this is my fault? I didn't say that. You implied it. He sighed like I was exhausting him. Like discovering betrayal was an inconvenience. I'll stop talking to her, he said. If that's what you want. If that's what I want. If basic loyalty was negotiable, that I asked him directly. Do you love her? No, too quick. Do you have feelings for her? A pause. I don't know. That hurt more than a yes that I should have left right then. Everything inside me knew the foundation had cracked. But 5 years isn't easy to walk away from. Shared memories argue louder than logic. That he promised it was over. Said he would delete her number. Said it meant nothing compared to us. He held my face and told me I was overthinking something small, but it wasn't small. That he had already given someone else the parts of him that used to belong to me. That I agreed to try. Not because I believed him completely, but because I wasn't ready to accept that our story might be ending. For a few days, he acted attentive again. More present. More affectionate. Almost like the beginning, but forced effort feels different than natural love, and even when he smiled at me, I couldn't stop wondering who he was thinking about when his phone stayed silent. That I forgave him. At least on the surface, but trust doesn't reset. It fractures, and something inside me knew this wasn't the full truth. That it was only the part one had managed to uncover.
I stopped waiting for things to make sense. By then, the confusion had already turned into something heavier. It wasn't doubt anymore. It was awareness. Quiet, constant, impossible to ignore. I knew something was there. I just hadn't faced it completely. That changed the moment I saw them. It wasn't planned. I wasn't looking for it. No dramatic build-up, no warning. Just one moment where everything I had been avoiding stood right in front of me, clear and undeniable. She wasn't supposed to be there. At least, not the way she said she would be. But she was. And she wasn't alone. I didn't move. I didn't react. For a second, everything inside me just stopped. Like my mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Because once it did, there would be no going back. The way she stood close to him, the way her body leaned without hesitation, the way she smiled, it wasn't something new. It was something familiar. Too familiar. I had seen that version of her before. It used to be for me. That was the moment everything connected. The late nights. The whispers. The distance. The small lies that never quite made sense. They weren't random. They were leading here all along, and I had let myself ignore it. I don't remember how long I stood there. Time didn't feel real anymore. It stretched in a way that made every second heavier than the last. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even sad. I was just empty, because the truth, when it finally shows itself, doesn't always hit like an explosion. Sometimes it just settles in quietly and changes everything without asking. I left before they noticed me, not because I was afraid, but because I needed a moment to understand what I was feeling. Confronting her right then wouldn't have given me answers. It would have just given me noise, and I didn't want noise. I wanted the truth. All of it. When I got back, she acted like nothing had happened. That part almost made it worse. The normal tone, the casual questions, the same routine she had been repeating for weeks. As if what I saw didn't exist. As if I didn't exist in that moment. I watched her carefully, not with suspicion anymore, but with clarity. Every movement felt different now. Every word had weight behind it. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to protect her image in my head. I was seeing her exactly as she was. Later, I asked her a simple question. Not aggressive. Not emotional. Just direct enough to break the pattern. Where were you today? She answered quickly. Too quickly. The same kind of answer she had given before. Confident. Smooth. Almost convincing, but this time, I didn't let it pass. I looked at her and held the silence just long enough for it to matter. And then I said it. I saw you. Everything changed in that second. Her expression didn't collapse immediately. It shifted slowly, like she was calculating how much I knew, how much she could deny, how far she could take it before the truth forced its way out. First, she denied it. Of course she did. Said I was mistaken. Said it wasn't what I thought. Said things that might have worked before but not anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just repeated what I saw, calmly, clearly, without giving her space to twist it into something else. That's when the denial cracked, not completely. Just enough. She changed her approach. The explanations started coming. Half-truths mixed with excuses. Words designed to soften the impact without actually taking responsibility. It's not like that. It didn't mean anything. I was going to tell you. Every sentence felt empty. Not because of what she was saying, but because of what she had already done. I asked her one question that mattered more than anything else. How long? She hesitated again. That same pause. But this time, it was heavier. Some time, she said quietly. Some time. Those two words carried more weight than any detailed confession ever could. Because they told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment. It was a choice. Repeated, deliberate, hidden behind every lie she had told me. That's when the anger finally showed up. Not explosive, not loud, but sharp. Controlled. The kind that cuts deeper because it doesn't need volume. All this time, you came back to me like nothing was wrong. She didn't answer because there was no answer that could fix that. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just in what she did. It was in how she lived with it. How she looked at me every day and chose not to tell me. How she let me trust her while she was already giving herself to someone else. That's what broke something inside me. Not just the relationship. Me. The person I was with her, the version of myself that believed in what we had, that trusted without hesitation. That version didn't exist anymore. I could feel it slipping away as we stood there in silence. She tried to reach for me then. Not physically, but emotionally. Apologies, regret, explanations. Words that might have meant something if they had come before, but now, they just felt late, too late. I stepped back, not dramatically, just enough to create space. Because being close to her in that moment felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Like I was standing next to someone I didn't know, and maybe I never really did. That thought stayed with me as everything settled into silence again, and no more questions, and no more denial. Just the truth, sitting between us, impossible to ignore. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering what was happening. I was thinking about what I was going to do next. The silence after everything was said felt heavier than the truth itself. Not because there was nothing left to talk about, but because nothing left could change what had already happened. We stood there with the weight of it between us, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix it. She kept talking at first. Apologies, explanations, promises that sounded urgent, like she was trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. I listened, not because I believed her, but because I needed to hear how far she would go to justify what she had done. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. It just happened. I was confused. Every word felt like it was trying to reduce something that wasn't small. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't an accident. This was time, intention, and choice. Repeated more than once. Hidden more than once. I didn't interrupt her. I let her finish. Because once she ran out of words, there would be nothing left to hide behind. When she finally stopped, the room felt empty in a different way. Not quiet, but cleared. Like everything unnecessary had been stripped away, leaving only what was real. I took a breath and looked at her, not with anger anymore, but with something calmer. Something final. You didn't just betray me, I said slowly. You replaced me while I was still here. She looked down. No denial this time. No defense. Just silence. That silence told me more than anything else she had said. For a moment, I thought about everything we had been. The beginning. The way we used to talk without effort. The way we understood each other without needing explanations. I thought about how real it all felt back then, and then I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. Just because something was real once, doesn't mean it still is. I had been holding on to memories like they were proof that things could go back. Like if I just waited long enough, tried hard enough, we would find our way back to that version of us. But standing there, I understood the truth clearly. There was no going back. Not because I didn't want to, but because the foundation we had built everything on was gone. Trust isn't something you rebuild with words. And it definitely doesn't come back after being broken this way. She stepped closer then, careful, like she didn't know if she was allowed to. Her voice was softer, almost fragile. We can fix this. I shook my head before she could say anything else. No, I said quietly. You can't fix something you chose to break. That wasn't anger. That was acceptance, and acceptance changes everything. For the first time since all of this started, I wasn't thinking about what she did or why she did it. I was thinking about myself. About what I deserved. About what I had ignored just to keep something alive that was already dying. I thought about all the moments I stayed silent when I should have spoken. All the times I convinced myself that things were okay when they clearly weren't. I wasn't blaming myself for her actions, but I understood my role in staying longer than I should have. That realization didn't hurt. It grounded me because it meant I had a choice now. She tried one last time. Not with excuses, but with emotion. Tears, regret, the kind of vulnerability that might have reached me before. But now, it felt different. Not fake, but misplaced. Those emotions belonged to a version of us that no longer existed. I don't want to lose you, she said. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. You already did. There was no cruelty in it. Just truth, and sometimes, truth is the only thing left when everything else falls apart. I didn't drag it out. I didn't create more moments than necessary. Because staying any longer would have only made it harder without changing the outcome. So I made the decision, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I'm done, I said. The words felt heavier than I expected, but also freeing in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Like I had been holding on to something that was slowly breaking me, and finally let it go. She didn't stop me. Maybe she understood. Maybe she didn't. At that point, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I finally chose myself. Walking away wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. There were still feelings there, still memories that didn't just disappear because the truth came out. But those things didn't control me anymore. For the first time, I saw the situation for what it was, not what I wanted it to be. And that made all the difference. As I stepped away from everything we had built, I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel healed. But I felt something more important, certain that I deserved honesty, certain that love shouldn't feel like doubt, certain that staying would have cost me more than leaving ever could. And as everything settled behind me, one thought stayed clear in my mind. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't finding out the truth. It's accepting that once you do, there's no version of the story where you can stay and still respect yourself.